Chief Emeka, how many women will ever be enough for you? Every week it's one woman after another. Are you not ashamed of yourself?
Ashamed? Susan, did you marry a pastor or a chief?
At least have shame and apologize, just once in your life.
Do lions apologize for eating meat? A man like me doesn't chase women. Women chase me.
So you've turned your shame into pride? That's your excuse?
A titled man without women is like jollof rice without stew. People will think something is missing.
Okay, Emeka. Okay.
Okay? Susanna, the day Chief Emeka falls, now that day rain will forget how to fall.
Chief Emeka laughed at me like I was nothing, like I had no plan, no patience, no next move. He did not know that okay was the most dangerous word I had ever said to him. Stay with me. My name is Susan, and this is the story of how I, a woman who once cried into her egusi soup, brought down a whole chief. But before we go anywhere, if you are new here, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because the kind of stories we tell on this channel, you do not want to miss a single one. Now let us go. I met Emeka 17 years ago at a burial ceremony in Agbo. Not a wedding, not a birthday, a burial, which, if you think about it, was a sign from God that I did not read correctly. He was standing near the canopy, looking like he owned the venue. Broad shoulders, fresh haircut, a smile that had too many teeth but somehow still worked. He was laughing loudly at something his friend said, and I remember thinking, that man is too comfortable at a funeral. Either he has no home training or he has so much confidence that the rules don't apply to him. Both things turned out to be true. He found me at the food table. Of course he did, because men like Emeka always find women like me. Women holding plates, minding their own business, just trying to get a piece of meat that is actually cooked through. Is this seat taken? He said, pointing at the empty chair beside me. There were 17 other empty chairs around that canopy. I counted, afterwards, when I had nothing but time. No, I said. And that was it. That was the beginning of everything. He was charming in that specific Nigerian way that makes you feel like you are the only woman in the room, even when the room is full. He laughed at my jokes. He refilled my drink without being asked. He asked about my work. I was a secondary school teacher at the time, and he actually listened, or he performed listening very well. At 26, I could not tell the difference. We dated for 2 years. He was attentive, he called, he sent things. He visited my mother and sat with her for 3 hours, discussing politics and Bible verses and the price of tomatoes. My mother, a woman who had never liked any man I brought home, pulled me aside after that visit and said, "Susan, hold this one." I held him. We married in December. Church wedding on Saturday, traditional on Sunday. My dress was beautiful. The food was plenty. The MC told too many jokes, but the guests were happy. Chief Emeka's family came in matching deep purple asoebi, and they were so coordinated that I was genuinely impressed. What I did not know, what nobody told me, was that his family being coordinated was the only organized thing about them. Mama Emeka was the first sign. She arrived at our home 3 days after the honeymoon. 3 days. We had barely finished unpacking. Emeka opened the door and there she was, with 2 bags, a pressing iron, and an attitude that suggested she was not visiting, she was moving in. "My son needs me close," she said, walking past me into the living room. I looked at Emeka. Emeka looked at the ceiling. That was the day I understood that I had not just married a man, I had married an entire system. Mama Emeka was not a wicked woman in the way that people sometimes describe mothers-in-law. Not loud, not openly hostile. She was worse than that. She was subtle. She would look at the food I cooked and say, in a way that communicated an entire essay of disapproval without using a single word. She would rearrange things in my kitchen and then look confused when I asked about it. She would tell Emeka stories about her own suffering, how she walked miles to fetch water, how she ground pepper by hand, how she managed the home with nothing. And she would tell these stories while sitting directly opposite me, maintaining full eye contact. I endured it because that is what young wives do. You endure and you pray and you believe that things will shift. Things did not shift. What shifted instead was Emeka. By our 3rd year of marriage, the charming man from the burial ceremony had relaxed into something else entirely. He had gotten a land allocation deal that made him serious money, and with the money came a title, Chief Emeka, bestowed by a community that was very grateful for the hall he built them. With the title came a convoy. With the convoy came confidence that was no longer charming, but had become something closer to arrogance. He started coming home late. At first, I told myself it was business. Chiefs have meetings, big men have commitments. This is how it goes. I made dinner and kept it warm and went to bed, and when he came in at midnight smelling of a different perfume, I told myself it was from the women who had greeted him at the event he attended. Women spray perfume, they hug, this is Nigeria. I was doing a lot of telling myself things in those years. By year 5, the lateness became absence. He would disappear for weekends and come back with stories that had holes in them. I was in Benin. For what? Business. What kind? Susan, do you want to start questioning me now after everything I have provided? That line, that exact line, he used it like a key. Every time I tried to open a door he didn't want opened, out came that line and the door would close. Because the truth is, he had provided. The house was good, the cars were there, my children, we had 2, a boy and a girl, were in private school. On paper, I was a kept woman, and kept women, according to Chief Emeka's personal philosophy, should keep quiet. I want to tell you about the night I confirmed it properly. Not suspected, confirmed. It was a Saturday. There was an Owambe in the area. One of those big, elaborate Lagos-style parties that somehow happen in our town every other weekend. A chief's wife had turned 60, and the celebration was the kind that required 3 outfit changes and a full makeup artist. I went. Emeka said he would come later. I was at the party for about an hour when I saw her, Jennifer. Now, I had heard the name before. You always hear names. A neighbor mentions it once, someone's facial expression shifts when you say your husband's name, a phone notification that Emeka covers too quickly. I had filed the name away in the part of my mind where I kept things I was not ready to look at directly. But there she was, at the same Owambe, wearing Emeka's chieftaincy colors. Not similar colors, not coincidentally close colors, his exact chieftaincy colors, the deep wine and gold combination that his council had assigned specifically to him. Colors that his household was supposed to wear, colors that I, his wife, was wearing. She was wearing them too. And she had not come alone. She had come with confidence. She was dancing near the front, close to where the celebrant was sitting, accepting sprays of money with the ease of a woman who believed she belonged there. She was beautiful, I will give her that. Tall, bright-skinned, the kind of laugh that carries across a room. I stood there with my plate of small chops, and I felt something move in my chest. Not the dramatic heartbreak of movies, something quieter, something that felt like a decision being made. I did not confront her, I did not make a scene. I watched her for 20 minutes, then I went home. Emeka was still not back. I sat in the parlor and waited. He came in at 1 a.m. The party was good, I asked. I didn't go, business ran late. And there it was. He lied to my face without blinking, without hesitation, with the ease of a man who has been practicing for years. Okay, I said, and I went to bed. That was the night something in me went very quiet. Not defeated, quiet, the way a generator goes quiet before someone restarts it with full fuel. I need to pause here and tell you about Uncle Chucks. Uncle Chucks is my father's younger brother. He is 58 years old, has never held a job for longer than 8 months, and his primary skill in life is appearing at critical moments and making whatever situation he finds complicated. He showed up at my house 3 days after the Owambe incident, uninvited, with a bag of unripe plantains and the news that he had heard things about Emeka. Susan, he said, settling into my sofa like it was his personal property. I have heard things, he said, bit into a piece of the unripe plantain he had brought. Raw. He ate it raw.
I want you to stay subscribed to this channel.
Because what Uncle Chucks did next with that information is one of the reasons this story ends the way it does. He meant well. He always means well. But Uncle Chucks helping you is like rain coming when you needed sunshine. Technically it is water, but it is not what you asked for. He went to confront Emeka without telling me. He arrived at Emeka's office. Emeka had a big construction office in town by this point, and told the receptionist he was there to see his in-law about a family matter. The receptionist, who did not know Uncle Chucks from Adam, let him wait. Emeka came out, and Uncle Chucks, in the middle of the open plan office, with junior staff and clients present, said loudly, "Emeka, we need to talk about this Jennifer matter before it goes too far." Emeka did not deny it. He laughed. He stood there in his own office, in front of his own staff, and he laughed. And then he said, and I am quoting this directly because 3 different people who were in that office told me word for word, "Emeka, my friend, go and tell Susan that a chief has needs. She knows what she signed up for. Tell her to be grateful." Grateful. When Uncle Chucks came back and reported this to me, he was shaking with anger. I was not shaking. I had passed shaking about 4 days ago. I was now in a completely different emotional territory that I did not have a name for yet. "Uncle Chucks," said Susan, "that man disrespected you. I know. We cannot let this stand. I know. I'm going to..." "Uncle Chucks," I looked at him, "please, sit down, eat something. Let me handle this." He opened his mouth. He closed it. He sat down. This was possibly the first time in recorded history that Uncle Chucks had listened to anyone, and it took me all of my restraint not to comment on it. Now, Pastor Henry. Pastor Henry was a problem I had not anticipated. He was the senior pastor of our church, a big congregation in the area, and he and Emeka had been friends since university. He baptized our children. He presided over disagreements in the community. He was, by all appearances, a man of God. He was also a man who needed a new auditorium. That auditorium had been the subject of fundraising for 3 years, and the single biggest donor, the man whose name was going on the cornerstone, was Chief Emeka. I went to Pastor Henry privately. I told him what was happening. I told him about Jennifer, about the introduction, about the Owambi, about the Chiefs Have Needs statement made in front of witnesses. He listened, he prayed, he held my hands, and then he said, "Susan, let us not be hasty. Marriage is a covenant. Have you considered that perhaps you need to be more supportive of your husband's position? A chief has many pressures. Pastor Henry. And sometimes as wives, we must create an environment where Pastor Henry." He stopped. "He did introduction for another woman," I said slowly, "in my marriage, while I am still here." There was a long pause. "I will speak to him," Pastor Henry said finally. He did speak to him. I found out later what that conversation looked like. Emeka told me himself, because by this point he was not even bothering to hide things from me. Emeka said Pastor Henry called him, they spoke for about 20 minutes, and at the end of the call, Pastor Henry said, "Just be discreet, my brother. Don't let it become a public thing." Discreet. That was the pastoral counsel I received. My husband should cheat more quietly. I want to tell you what I did next, because this is the part of the story where people who know me in real life still shake their heads. I did nothing visibly. For 3 months, I did absolutely nothing that anyone could see. Emeka watched me settle into what he decided was acceptance. I cooked, I managed the home, I attended his chieftaincy events and smiled in the photographs. Mama Emeka watched me and concluded with visible satisfaction that I had finally matured. Jennifer, from what I heard, was telling people that Susan had accepted her place. Jennifer was never more wrong about anything in her life. What I was actually doing during those 3 months, quietly, carefully, without telling a single soul except one person, was building. The one person I told was my cousin Adako, who lives in Abuja and is an accountant. Adako is the opposite of Uncle Chucks. She is calm, methodical, and has never made a situation worse in her life. I called Adako and I told her everything. And Adako said 6 words that changed the direction of my life. She said, "Do you have a joint account?" I did. She said, "Have you ever looked at it carefully?" I had not carefully. Emeka handled the finances. I had a card that worked, and I had never questioned the details behind it. That's the thing about being a kept woman. You stop looking at the engine because the car is moving. Adako flew in the following weekend. We spent 2 days going through everything I had access to. Statements, property documents, receipts, things I had filed away for years without reading properly. And what we found was interesting. Not illegal, not exactly, but interesting. Chief Emeka had been very generous with assets. There was a property in Asaba registered in a name I did not recognize. There was a car, a Prado, that appeared in a transaction but was not in our compound. There were transfers, regular transfers, to an account we had no visibility into. Adako took photographs of everything. "What are we going to do with this?" I asked her. She said, "We are not going to do anything yet. We are going to wait for the right moment." Now, here is where Uncle Chucks re-enters the story and accidentally becomes useful. The Chieftaincy Council in our area holds a quarterly general meeting. It's a big event. All the chiefs, their wives, community leaders, sometimes press. It's the kind of event where everyone is dressed and seated and on their best behavior, and speeches are made and photographs are taken, and it's generally very organized and very public. Emeka has been planning it for months. Uncle Chucks, meanwhile, had a friend. His name is not important. What is important is that this friend worked in audiovisual equipment, the kind of company that does projectors and sound systems for corporate events. Uncle Chucks, who had been feeling guilty about the office confrontation disaster and had been looking for ways to help without making things worse, had an idea. He called me 2 weeks before the council meeting. "Susan," he said, "my friend is doing the AV setup for Emeka's event." I was quiet. "And my friend owes me a favor." I was still quiet. "I'm just saying," Uncle Chuck said carefully, "if there was anything you wanted to show people at that event, technically it could be arranged." I sat down. I thought about it for a very long time. Then I called Adako. The week before the event, Edeka was in high spirits. The hall was ready, the caterers were booked, he had a new ashwebi for his household. Yes, the same wine and gold. He called me into the bedroom and showed me my fabric. He said, "You will look good." And he smiled at me the way he used to smile at that burial all those years ago. And for a moment, he looked like the man I had married. Then his phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, and something in his face changed, and he stepped out of the room to take the call. And I stood there holding the fabric, and I thought, no, we are not doing this anymore. The day of the event arrived. The hall was full. Chiefs and their wives, community leaders, local government officials. Pastor Harry was seated near the front, because of course he was. Mama Emeka was at the family table in a head tie so tall it blocked the view of the person behind her. Uncle Chucks was somewhere near the back because I had told him to be there and also told him not to speak to anyone or do anything until I signaled. Emeka opened the event with a speech. He was magnificent, honestly. The man could talk. He spoke about community, about legacy, about the importance of family values. He talked about his wife, me, and gestured toward where I was sitting and said I was the backbone of everything he had built. The room clapped. I smiled. Then came the multimedia section of the program. Emeka had planned a short video about the history of the council and his contributions to the community. His AV team had been coordinating all week. Or rather, Uncle Chucks' friend had been coordinating all week. The screen lit up. The video began. It started normally. Photographs of the council, photographs of the hall being built, photographs of community projects. The room was watching pleasantly, nodding. Some people were already reaching for their phones to record. And then the photographs changed. The property in Asaba, with the registered name clearly visible. The Prado transaction. The financial printers printed and clean, dates and amounts highlighted. And then, because Adako is thorough and had done things I did not even ask her to do, there were screenshots.
text messages, not intimate ones, business ones. Jennifer discussing the introduction timeline with Emeka. Jennifer referencing our house in Asaba. Jennifer asking when Susan would be sorted out. Sorted out. The room went completely silent. Emeka was standing at the front. I watched his face go through approximately 7 expressions in 4 seconds. Confusion, recognition, horror, fury, calculation, something that might have been fear, and then a very forced version of calm that was not fooling anyone. He turned to the AV booth. The video was still playing. Uncle Chuck's friend had been specifically instructed not to stop it under any circumstances. He had been paid in advance, he was wearing earphones and looking at his equipment and not making eye contact with anyone. The council chairman, an elderly man in his 70s, leaned forward in his chair. He was watching the screen with the concentration of a man reading a legal document. Mama Emeka's head tie was so tall I couldn't see her face. I didn't need to. Pastor Harry had gone very still. The video ended. The room was quiet for what felt like an entire geological era. Then the council chairman cleared his throat. He said, "Chief Emeka, I think we need to adjourn for a private discussion." Emeka turned to look at me, and I looked at him. I did not smile. I did not perform triumph. I just looked at him, and I want to believe that in that look he saw clearly, possibly for the first time, that the woman he had been laughing at had never been the woman he thought she was. "Susan," he started. "This is not the place," I said calmly. "You said it yourself. Family matters are private." He closed his mouth. The event dissolved into chaos. That was very politely contained because Nigerians at formal events are excellent at containing chaos. People moved, conversations happened in corners. The caterers, who had not been briefed on any of this, continued to circulate with small chops, which I thought was a very solid commitment to their job description. Uncle Chucks found me near the exit about 20 minutes later. "Susan," he said. He was grinning so wide his face looked genuinely at risk. That was, I know, Uncle Chucks. The chairman's face went, "I know," and Pastor Henry just left without eating. I noticed. He grabbed my hands. "Your father would be proud." I did not cry. I had promised myself I would not cry that day. But I will tell you that it was a close thing. Now, what happened next? Emeka did not come home that night. I found out later he had gone to stay with a friend from the council who was sympathetic. I was not surprised. Men like Emeka retreat when the performance collapses. Jennifer, I heard, had also been having a very bad evening. Apparently, the screenshots that went on that screen had included a few messages where she had been quite specific about her plans for after Susan is dealt with. The phrase "dealt with" had not gone over well with anyone who read it, including, interestingly, several of her own friends who were in the room. Mama Emeka called me the next morning. I let the phone ring. She called again. I let it ring again. On the third call, I picked up. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Susan, that thing you did." "Ma, it was not a small thing." "No, ma, it was not." She was quiet again for so long I thought she had gone. Then, "My son behaved badly." I did not respond. "He is still my son," she said. And in her voice was everything, the defensiveness and the regret and the love and the awareness that she had contributed to something she was now watching burn down. "But he behaved badly." "Yes, ma." She hung up. I sat with my tea and thought about what it means to be seen by someone who spent 10 years pretending not to see you. The council held their private meeting 2 days later. I was not there, but Adako had done enough that it did not matter. The financial irregularities were, as it turned out, actually the more serious problem. The property in Asaba and the unaccounted transactions were the kind of thing that the council could not simply file away. They commissioned an independent review. They asked Emeka to step back from his position pending the review. He stepped back. The hall that he had just opened, the hall that was supposed to be his legacy, was quietly handed over to a management committee pending the review findings. His name was still on the cornerstone. It would stay there, but the man behind the name was no longer standing as tall as he had been. Pastor Harry came to see me. He sat across from me and he looked tired, like a man who had been carrying something and finally acknowledged the weight. He said, "I should have handled it differently." I said, You should have. He said, I let other considerations. The auditorium. He winched. Yes. Pastor Harry, I said, I don't need an apology right now. What I need from you is to handle the marriage properly. Whatever Emeka and I decide, and we have not decided anything yet, I need it handled with the same seriousness you would give any other member of this congregation. He nodded. He looked relieved, actually, like someone had removed the option to be slippery. Whatever you both decide, he repeated. Yes. Now, here is the part that people always ask me about. What did I decide? I want to be honest with you because this channel is built on honesty and I think you deserve the full truth of it. I did not immediately file for divorce. I know that is what the story seems to be building toward, and I know it is what most people expected, and I will tell you why I did not. It was not because I was weak. It was not because I was afraid. It was not even because of the children, though the children were part of my thinking. It was because I decided that I was not going to let Chief Emeta's choices define my timeline. He had spent years making decisions on my behalf, deciding I would endure, deciding I would accept, deciding I would be sorted out. I was not going to rush into the next chapter of my life on the schedule his failures had created. I asked him to leave the house. He left. He went to his friend's place, and then after 2 weeks, he rented something. I stayed in our home with our children, and I breathed, probably for the first time in years.
Jennifer disappeared relatively quickly. She had, it turned out, been sustained largely by the promise of Emeka's status and resources, both of which were now significantly complicated. She posted one cryptic thing on her Instagram story, something about knowing your worth, and then she went quiet. I chose to take that as character growth and move on. Mama Emeka came to visit 3 weeks after the event. She came properly this time, called first, asked if she could come, arrived without bags. We sat in the same parlor where she had once rearranged my kitchen without permission and looked at each other. I did not like you when Emeka first brought you, she said, with the straightforwardness that I had always actually respected about her underneath everything else. I know, Mama. I thought you were not enough for him. I remember. I was wrong, she said it, plainly, no decoration. Not about everything, but about you. I was wrong about you. I made her tea. We sat together for 2 hours. We talked about her son and his failures and her own role in shaping some of those failures, and we talked about the children and what they needed. And at the end, she held my hand and she said, "Whatever you decide, Susan, I will support you, not him, you." I will not pretend that it fixed everything. It did not, but it was something. Emeka called me the following month. He had been calling periodically, and I had been answering when I felt ready. This call was different. His voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "I'm sorry," he said. Just that. No conditions, no, but you must understand, no, a chief has needs. Just, "I'm sorry." I did not respond immediately. I let it sit between us for a moment. "I know," I said finally. "I'll call you about the children's schedule." We are not back together. I want to be clear about that. The story did not end with a reconciliation and a renewed wedding vow and a sunset. Real life does not always give you that, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. What it gave me instead was something I had forgotten I was allowed to have. Quiet, purpose, mornings in my own kitchen without performing anything for anyone. My daughter asking me why she seemed happier and not knowing how to explain to an 11-year-old that sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is stop managing other people's comfort at the expense of her own. My son, who is 14 and observes everything, said to me one day, "Mommy, you seem like you again." Like you again. I held that for a long time. Uncle Chucks, bless his heart, threw himself a private celebration for his role in the whole thing. He called it his strategic contribution to justice. He told the story at a family gathering with embellishments I did not recognize but chose not to correct. In his version, he had planned everything from the beginning and the whole thing was his idea. I let him have it. He had been useless for so many years that he deserved one chapter where he was the hero, even if the chapter was mostly fiction. Adako got a bonus from me, a proper one. She protested. I insisted. Some people show up for you in ways that change your life, and they deserve to be acknowledged. As for Pastor Henry, he did eventually handle the marriage dissolution properly. No special treatment for Emeka, no whispered advice to be discreet. He sat across from both of us separately and then together, and he conducted himself like the pastor he was supposed to be all along. I think his public nature of his previous failure had done something useful to his conscience. I chose not to remain bitter about it. Bitterness is heavy, and I have put down enough weight. Chief Emeka still has his title. The review found some financial irregularities that required settlement, but not the kind that strip a man from a title he bought. He is less loud now. The convoy is shorter. I heard he attends church more regularly. Whether that is genuine transformation or performance management, I cannot say, and I have decided it is not my business to figure out. Jennifer, last I heard, had relocated to Port Harcourt. I genuinely wish her well. She was a symptom, not the disease. Mama Emeka and I still speak. Not every day, but we speak. She sends things for the children, I send things back. We have built out of the wreckage of what her son did to us both, a strange and honest kind of relationship that neither of us expected. And me? I went back to teaching. I had left my job in year 3 of the marriage because Emeka said it was not necessary and I had believed him. I called the school and they had a vacancy and I took it. Standing in front of a classroom of 28 teenagers who do not care at all about your chieftaincy husband or your Jennifer problem is the most grounding thing I have done in years. I am still in the house. My children are still in their schools. I still cook egusi soup, but now I do not cry into it. I cry sometimes, yes, about other things, about the years, about the version of this story where I had moved sooner, seen sooner, acted sooner. But grief about time lost is different from the grief of ongoing defeat, and I am learning to let myself feel the first kind without collapsing back into the second. My daughter asked me recently if I was going to marry again. I told her I didn't know. She thought about it for a moment, and then she said, "That's okay, Mommy. You have us." Yes, I have them, and I have myself back, which it turns out was the thing I needed most. There is a thing that women in this situation are often told, and I want to address it directly before I close. They are told to be patient, to pray, to submit, to manage, to endure. And I am not here to tell you that prayer doesn't work or that patience is worthless. I believe in both. But there is a kind of patience that is actually just fear wearing a spiritual costume. There is a kind of submission that is actually just the absence of options dressed up as virtue. And there is a kind of endurance that is not strength. It is slow erasure. I endured for 10 years, and what I know now that I did not know then is that the endurance was not what protected my marriage. My marriage was already gone. The endurance was just protecting Emeka's convenience. The day I stopped protecting his convenience, things changed. Not overnight, not without pain, not in the clean way that satisfying YouTube stories are supposed to end, but they changed. Chief Emeka laughed in my face, and then the tables turned. Not because I was dramatic, not because I was loud, not because I destroyed him publicly for the satisfaction of destruction, but because I quietly, carefully decided that I was worth more than I had been accepting, and then I proved it. That is the moral. That is the lesson. The woman you dismiss is building something while you are laughing, and one day the projector will come on.
Before you go, I want to ask you something honest. If you were in my shoes that morning, standing in that parlor, tears on your face, while your husband laughed at you and patted your shoulder like a child, what would you have done? Would you have stayed, or would you have left that same night? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. If this story moved you, if it made you laugh, made you think, made you feel something real, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Every time you hit that subscribe button, you tell us that these stories matter. And they do. They matter because they are real, not always in name, not always in detail, but in the feeling, in the specific Nigerian, painful, funny, ultimately triumphant feeling of a woman who refused to stay sorted out. Thank you for watching. I am Susan, and I am still here.